parcel and someone comes to me to put a pig farm on that property,
Right.
I can't tell them no. I can tell them how it needs to be built, but we can't tell them no.
I want to add just one thing here, and where Fairhope is unique, and we're going to get a map here pretty soon, but is that most of the area, in fact, here is the map, but it doesn't extend past south where the airport is, but most of Fairhope is colored in white, which means, for the most part, that it's unzoned. And this means that it doesn't even have county zoning, and there's a lot of parts in Baldwin County. And the threat is that in this white unincorporated area has a direct impact on the quality of life that we have. And that's something that really has not been addressed for a very long time, but is a focus now, and trying to incentivize people coming in. And the comprehensive land use plan is going to be just that, connecting and engaging all of the citizens in the unincorporated areas, because people do care more, I think, now about what's going to happen if something's built next to them. And I think that is different than it was before. I want to be able to do what I want with my property. I think it's more important that their property stays,
protected. And
protected.
I think that's, I think that's how what I'm hearing, new to town, granted, but hearing some of the desires for the unzoned properties right now, I think remaining unzoned doesn't offer any protection. I think it might be more appropriate if they were able to determine what zoning they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And by that, there's some really creative zoning types that they can come with a proposal. It doesn't have to be your standard traditional underlying zoning that the city has. It can be something completely unique and different that they can determine what is unwanted in their neighborhoods, but still offer the protection. Because I think you'll see, tonight on the council agenda, there's a couple of great examples of where this comes into play. We have PUDs. It's a planned unit development intended to be designed as a comprehensive unit, usually mixed use, but it's how they kind of work together. Those moving parts work together. When something's in our city, we can be more stringent on our rules and applications for those things, because every PUD, unlike base zoning, you always hear the term by right. Base zoning gives you a use by right, or dimensions by right, whereas a PUD is a unique zoning type specific to that project. The negotiations between the city and an applicant result in a new zoning type for that specific property, and every PUD is unique. There's no precedence created.
Well, except in Fairhope. Well, I'm just kidding. We're trying to make it unique.
Right.
Okay.
Well, and the challenge with that is when all kind of variables come into play. We can be more subjective we can think about what buildings look like. We can think about what sewer is. There are innovative techniques they can use for sewer. That might be where we can come up with some agreements that we might not be able to do in another base zoning. But also just reality comes into play. And I think tonight you'll see a good example. I think both staff and that we've reviewed some PUDs when they're in currently unzoned property, but are willing to annex into the city. We take that into play because there are some things they can do by right by being unzoned property. So it's always a challenge. We get the feedback. How do you let that happen? Why did y'all let this be built? Well, we're making things. Very seldom in the planning world is it about right or wrong. It's some level of better or worse. Because when we if we say no, if we just hold our ground and say no, we're not going to do this, and they build it anyway. This has happened when growth all over the country. When you do that, and it's the same things built outside our municipal boundaries, it remains outside of our boundaries. We can no longer have influence on how it develops in the future. We lose revenues, property
taxes.
sales tax, if
Impact
there happens to be
fees.
a commercial. There's so many things that, in that situation, if that property was in the city, we might choose to be more stringent on what we would allow.
Yeah.
But we have to take all, especially in a PUD, we have to take all things into account. And sometimes that leverage of being unzoned is such a hard to overcome.
Yeah.
Right.
The risks are.
The other thing that map shows, and that Hunter's talking about, that folks don't understand, when folks think of a city, they tend to think in terms of blocks. This is in, this is out, this is, this isn't. If you look at that map, you see all those, the blue is the city limits, and you see all those patches of white in the middle of it. And folks don't understand, that you may have down the street, you may have one side of the street in, the left side's out. And the reason for that is, right now, the way that our legislation is, parcels have to be annexed individually per parcel at the request of that parcel owner. You don't just take a block.
Right.
So and especially 181 right now, and I had this discussion unfortunately with someone, they wanted to convert what was a house to more of a commercial use. Well, 3 lots down, they can do it because they're in the county and they're unzoned. Where he is, can't do it because he's in the city and he's zoned. But if you look down that side of the street, you'd never know it, because there's 2 or 3 lots that are in, then there's 1 out, and then there's 3 or 4 in, then there's
Right.
3 out.
But you
And
could go to the Board of Adjustments.
Well, not on that, because it's what they wanted to do was not allowed by
Oh,
zoning
okay,
at all.
okay.
But it's just folks kind of think that the city is one big kind of spot, and it's not. It's
very
more of a
spotty.
jigsaw. It's a jigsaw puzzle.
It's a jigsaw puzzle.
It's a jigsaw puzzle, and that kind of makes it more difficult too, in terms of trying to figure out what's in, what's out, how do you enforce, how do you not, and that's why you have a gas station at a roundabout, because 3 of those corners are out of the city. 1 of them's in, but the other 3 are out.
And what we want to do is plan the annexation too, because one, it has to be contiguous, but it doesn't make sense really to have regulations that are so far outside, outside the city limits that it's not manageable.
Right.
And those are things that we're looking at. We have, of course, a school district, we have a planning jurisdiction, a police jurisdiction, and they're all different. We really need to try to, focus on where are we going to be in 10 years, and that's what we have to look at and incentivize really these landowners to come into the city. I mean, it does help us all.
Yeah, and maybe Hunter and Buford can talk about the difference between zoning, subdivision, and then the comprehensive plan, because somehow they all mirror each other in one way or another, but based on where you are and how the infrastructure is established and the comprehensive plan itself, leans toward what type of developments are approved in those particular areas.
Absolutely, and we'll hit that chronologically. I think that comprehensive plan looks at future growth, less detail oriented. It's big concepts. It includes things like reaching outside. I've heard the criticism. Why are y'all even planning outside of your city? You should be in our neighborhood. Because voluntarily, people are annexing into our city. And if we don't consider any of those things, we're unprepared. So a comprehensive plan looks at a bigger area than our municipal limit. It looks at, environmental issues regionally, utilities, where we might be growing there. It takes those things into play. And it influences our regulations, but in and of itself is not a regulation. It's a plan.
It's something too that we want when we go out to these unincorporated areas, that this is the plan that this area envisions. I mean, there has to be buy-in and communication so that, we can plan accordingly. And a lot of this comprehensive land use plan will be about just communication and citizen engagement.
And to be clear where we're at there, because we've talked about this many times, it's not us telling those communities what they're going
Right.
to be. It's hearing their input and putting that into a plan that is not regulations. It's just, it's guidelines as we move toward the future when we start.
Conceptual.
Yeah, as things, transpire and someone wants to annex in, now there's a thought process where we've started maybe moving utilities in that direction to supply, or upgrading our systems to be able to prepare for that. That's what we're thinking. So the more we know from those communities, the more we can better prepare.
Right.
So that's what our comprehensive plan process that hopefully will be kicking off.
And we hope too the result will be that we're inviting that type of development, because when there is no plan or vision, what's going to happen is the developer's going to make it for you. And
Right.
the developers right now are seeing opportunity with, especially in the unincorporated area, to buy up property and parcel it out and really try to make the most out of each square inch.
Yeah.
But the reality is if there is a better plan, everybody wins, including the developer.
Well, and it's important to revisit those plans periodically. I think since 1954, I believe, there was one of our first comprehensive plans. I think they called it a land use plan. For instance, the intersection of 98 and Fairhope Avenue was considered a village. Well, I'm of the opinion that as soon as we got the ALDOT as a partner on 98, that became less village planning than corridor planning.
Absolutely.
So that, we have an opportunity now, that's also kind of happening on 181. We have that partner. You can see the highways moving south. So, you always need to revisit that comprehensive plan and see where we're at today. And as fast as we're
And ask
growing
what
now, that
citizens,
changes daily.
what do you think is a village?
Yeah.
Because
Well,
it's pretty vague.
Yeah, and instead of having the dot in the middle of the intersection and the village extends out from the middle, maybe it ought to be on the edge of the right-of-way and the right-of-way ought to border.
Yeah.
The major arteries ought to border the village. And here again, I'm no expert on any of it, but I do sit on the planning commission, and, just if you take a straw poll of people who have developments going on around them, you will find that nobody wants any of it.
Right.
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 And it makes it difficult because you want to be able to, at least sympathize with their desire, and you want to try to do what you can to work with the developer to make it as easy as it can be on the neighbors. But at the same time, I don't know that you can just say no.
Yeah.
You can't, everybody has a right to do what they want to with their property. I mean, that's part of
To an
what we
extent.
are.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and that's the dynamics of what we're dealing with, because a lot of the times the people developing the property are third, fourth generation, people that live here and grew up here, and you're telling them now that this, family investment has no value. You can't do that.
No.
Well,
So
and-
it's how
and-
you grow smartly.
Yeah, there's a tendency, I think a lot of people kind of hear the word developer and think of it as an ugly word.
Right.
Developer built the house we're all living in at some point.
Exactly.
Somehow.
So
Right.
they,
And
and they
sometimes the
wouldn't be doing
developer
it. Yeah.
is you.
Yeah.
And I'd like to jump in here too, and these are great segues, is that, so Mayor and fellow staff's question that I've been asked frequently in recent weeks involves density. Density is not necessarily a bad word or an ugly word if it is executed well. And so what I want to try to do and try to paint a picture with words to explain this a bit better. Because when we get in meetings, you have a lot of information to cover very quickly because you're respectful of the citizens' time, you're respectful of the council's time, you're respectful of staff's time, planning commission's time, et cetera. When and speaking to citizens, when you hear the term units per acre or lots per acre, we use those terms interchangeably. So usually most of the time when I'm talking, I default to units per acre. I wish Richard Johnson was here today. He can't be with us here today, so I'll interject a Johnsonism. In physics, density is mass divided by volume. In planning, that mass is the unit count or lot count of a development, and the volume is acreage. And for the mathematicians out there, I realize we're talking about 3 dimensions versus 2 dimensions, but please humor me. So we make our measurements in units per acre. Now, if we say a development's average development density is 3 units per acre, that does not mean that every single acre has 3 units on it. It's physically not always possible to do that. So I'm going to try to paint a picture of words here to explain that. The following scenario, let's suppose we have a piece of property that is zoned R1, low density single family, which means those minimum lot sizes are 15,000 square feet, which also means the minimum lot width is 100 feet. So you must have a lot of at least 100 feet wide by 150 feet long, 100 by 150. An acre is 43,560 square feet. To get 3 lots, you'd need 45,000 square feet. Now, that is assuming that this 1 acre, or in this case 45,000 square foot piece of property, is already fronting on a paved, publicly maintained street or road. All the utilities are already there. And let's assume that it has a conveyance system for stormwater, a ditch, or some other series of structures already there, already in the right-of-way that can accept all the drainage from those 3 lots. If all you have is 1 acre, you're only going to get 2 lots. If you have an extra 1,500 square feet or so, if you've got 45,000 square feet, then you can get 3 lots. So just by that very super simple example, you can tell that it's possible, but not always likely, you're going to get 3 units on a single acre. One more scenario. Suppose it's zoned R2, medium density single family. Those minimum lot sizes are 10,500 square feet. They are 75 feet wide. In that scenario, same piece of property, you could get 4 units on 1 piece of acre, or excuse me, you could get 4 units on 1 acre piece of property. Again, if all those other conditions were met, and you would still have some property left over. Now, the allowable development density of R2 is 4.15 units per acre. You can't build 0.15 units and that be, you can't build 0.15 of an acre and that be a legal lot of record inside Fairhope's, inside the city limits of Fairhope.
Because of all of our, the things that we require.
And again, so if you're looking at an entire development, it may average 3 units per acre. It may average 3.2 units per acre. Not every acre has 3 units on it, because you have to build right-of-ways, which are going to be 50 feet wide or 40 feet wide, depending upon the level of service.
And those aren't built into the area calculation because the lot size is what the lot size is. You can't count the right-of-way as part of that.
No, absolutely not. So if you, it's a twofold answer. If you look at the entire development as a whole, without removal of the right-of-ways and without removal of the other infrastructure, then you could have a raw calculation for the development density. When we are calculating for green space, all of those right-of-ways, all of that infrastructure is removed, and an even denser calculation is artificially created. Artificial is probably not the correct word. Probably an assumed density is calculated at a higher level to generate more green space on the development.
Yeah, and Buford, correct me if I'm, just so that the folks listening can have an example in their head. R2, you can have almost 3, you can have 3 units per acre just based on that. That's most all of our city, that's most of our city zoning. That's the entire fruit and nut district. Those are the
those are non-conforming, those are smaller. So
and
think Morphy Avenue, Fairhope Avenue, all those are regular full-size.
Yeah,
R2
to
lots.
put that in real terms for folks, most of the subdivisions we live in are R2.
Right.
What he's talking about. So they're
Yes.
R2, and that would allow 3 per acre. So
That's
you know,
correct.
most of the places we all live and the people that are watching live, that's what it is.
And you know, if you look at kind of principles of good city planning through the years, that's a good density level when it's done properly, and then preserving other areas. You know, where modern development kind of misses the mark a little bit. It's no one's fault. It's just the requirement. When you have thousands of acres and can plan a city, it's easy to start connecting everything. You know, as it kind of happens piecemeal with different entities and different targets, you know, it's hard. You know, we see it all the time. I mean, we require stub streets on a subdivision.
Absolutely.
The intent there is so there's connectivity with the next development. What happens when you get an application and everyone surrounding that potential subdivision comes in and screams, "We don't want those connected because those cars are going to be on our streets." Well, that defeats the purpose of what we're doing. So what you wind up with the dead-end roads, the hammerheads that go nowhere, so everyone has to come back out to the main thoroughfares or connector streets and puts traffic in condensed situations, and then we have to correct for that, widen those roads, create highways.
Does the city usually take over those roads, though? Aren't the cities usually
They
given to
do,
the city for
and-
maintenance?
And I would say, in my short time, I think there's certainly a push to make those connections. Whether the applicants, or I'm sorry, the critics like that or not, because it's
Right.
better for the overall city.
Right.
But there have been situations where they haven't been required to do that. And you wind up with because we all understand the safety and the peacefulness of a cul-de-sac. You know, that we know there are not cars coming through, but that's also bad, you know, for the overall problems with the city. You know, when everything's connected, then the right-of-ways provide easy access for utilities and
other services.
and other
Yeah.
services that are in the right-of-way, so it's more cost-efficient building those. It's more efficient in its, you know, whole function. You can expand those instead of having to go down dead ends and then coming, you know, that just, principally, that's kind of talking about what Buford, leading off with density, you know, that is not in it of itself a bad thing. It's kind
Right.
of how that's
Because
done.
I will say that when I went to the city design workshop, you know, Fairhope, population-wise, was the, you know, smallest population out of the 6 and smallest by far. But all of the cities that were there were considered small cities. So it's really about, as we grow, you know, making sure that we have that sense of place, and which is the PUD, I think, what that's supposed to be for. But lately, it's been about the developer and making, you know, some leeway for the developer. That's what we're stopping. For a lot of people that are listening, you know, from the application, from the property owner to the application process, you know, some of the frequently asked questions, so they understand that right now, especially this term, things are consistent and we go based on a set of rules. The Planning Commission is very important. We do have mostly an all-new Planning Commission that does not take any direction from me. In fact, I don't meet with developers, and if I do, the Planning Department's always there, because this needs to be, you know, development and politics. I mean, it really needs to be consistent and fair to all, so.
Sure. And that's absolutely concur that has not been, there's been little pressure from politics on our review of projects, and moving forward. You know, we're implementing or proposing new PUD regulations, some lot coverage requirements that are changing. You know, there's some things that we're proposing, and we've received nothing but support on that thus far. So we'll see those work their way through. I think Planning Commission has a couple that we're going to recommend next Monday, and those will work their way to council. So I do applaud, you know, everyone for kind of letting professionals be professionals in that regard, because that's sometimes tough. That's not to say we don't have room for improvement in certain applications. And kind of touching a little bit on underlying zoning versus a PUD, because I think a PUD is very unique in and of itself, and also overlay districts. We have underlying zoning that's been around, Euclidean zoning, some people call it. It's been around forever. And it basically tells the size of the lot and then what you can do on that lot. Then we have other tools at our disposal, and the city already has a few overlay districts. There's actually one we're working on now for Highway 98 Greeno Road. Those add extra stipulations or allowances that don't affect all of the underlying zoning. That's still into play, but just a few special things. And then we have plan-based, you know, some people call them master plans, infill districts, PUDs. There's other and smaller versions of that are plan-based. You know, it's whatever is on the plan that works its way through staff, Planning Commission, and council. That's what gets approved. So those are some of the processes that people will see, and most of the questions we stem, and it's great to get in the conversation early. That is successful projects, in my opinion. The toughest thing to do is when someone's already invested a lot of money in a design or idea before they come to us.
Which
And
we're
then
trying to get them to
Yeah,
come
right.
sooner in that
And I mean,
process.
that's, Eric sees that too, when
Yes.
somebody's already got plans and spent a lot of money, we're put in a position where we all have a heart, we understand the
business.
dynamic and the business of things, and we want to massage that the best we can, but, that asking forgiveness instead of permission is a tactic that can only go so far.
Right.
And that's our challenge.
It is. Some of the most uncomfortable conversations I have is after someone has invested time and money in something, and then they come to see us and find out, now you can't do that there. It's either not zoned properly, or the plans you had designed don't meet the requirements, or they didn't know about, they purchased a piece of property and didn't know it had all wetlands on it. Well, there's very
And
specific things.
sometimes
that-
they purchase property and it wasn't wetlands until now.
That's correct.
Right.
And so, one of the things we did, and it covers a lot of things, is we put together a frequent, or a home buyer's due diligence list, and it's on our website on the building department page. And it talks about zoning, it talks about setbacks, it talks about wetlands and drainage. These are questions to ask before you purchase a piece of property. Because, I've had issues where in a subdivision, typically the builders, when they get a new subdivision, they build setback to setback. They want to maximize as much structure as they can on that lot, which is great, and that's legal. But the person who buys it now wants to come and put a sunroom on the back of it. Well, you can't, because they built that all the way up to the rear setback. And they didn't know that before they bought it. And unfortunately, Alabama is a buyer beware state. There aren't a whole lot of disclosure requirements in Alabama real estate law. So, it's really up to the purchaser to do the due diligence and come and talk to us so that they know what they're buying. And because it's uncomfortable sometimes,
Right.
and I hate having those conversations with folks.
No.
But it
But
happens.
That's what we're trying to do, is just get more tools out for people to
Right.
understand, because there are a lot of buyers right now.
And Mayor, we had a situation probably 18 months ago where a citizen, and I think they talked to both Eric and me, and they had spent many thousands of dollars buying a set of house plans from a major national, regional publication that sells house plans. And they spent many, many thousands of dollars buying those house plans. And if built, it would one, not get a building permit because it was across all setback lines, was greatly in excess of the lot coverage, greatly in excess of the height limitations. And the person,
And wasn't engineered for a hurricane.
was not engineered for a hurricane, and we hadn't even thought about, and didn't even think about, are there any delineated wetlands on this piece of property? And so someone spent a lot of money on something that they cannot modify because they bought it from a national publication. Who knows if it's possible to contact that architect and ask them to make custom revisions?
And think
And
about
chances
that.
are probably not.
Think about that magnified, and I think that's one of the biggest things we can change, because there's been lots of improvements over the last 3 years, and I think one of the big steps we can make now for these bigger projects is getting involved in the conversation earlier, because there's thousands of dollars involved in engineered plans by the time they see us. And it's hard to massage a project that way.
And the beauty of this too, when they come, from the beginning, is you're not only going to learn exactly what's needed, but there's opportunity too for the city to sometimes partner
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
storm drainage, where it would save the developer or the owner money.
Yeah.
So,
We're doing the same thing with utilities, we're
Mhm.
looking at locations where we needed an upgrade in transmission capacity or in
Mhm.
pumping capacity at some point, and if we can pay a little bit, to add to the cost of what they're gonna build anyway, and we can get all of that for, maybe 30 cents on the dollar, that's a pretty good
Right.
investment on our part. And, we have a lot to do anyway, and to have something that is able to be built with somebody else's oversight in terms of construction, in terms of seeing that everything is built according to a standard that we established. It's a pretty good way to build what we need in terms of transmission and infrastructure
Right.
improvements. You know, and we're still working to do some rehabilitation work on some older infrastructure. We're still looking to get some mapping done on some of our infrastructure so we know what we have and what capacities we have available to us. And, you know, to meet both challenges is difficult enough as it is, but, you know, not to be able to have the opportunity to partner with people when they do
Absolutely. 'Cause,
have,
I mean,
you
once
know, a
it's too far
project
along.
that's in a location that we need some support. I mean, I see it as a win-win for both the developer and us. And as difficult it is to push forward with new development that some people are opposed to, at the same time, they have a right to do it. And at the same time, you know, they're working to help us too. And you know, the added connection fees we have now help support some of that as well. You know,
Well, I think it's just the you know, the shifting of the idea that, you know, planning and development in the city of Fairhope is a negative, that we're totally against it, which a lot of citizens don't want the growth. But since you cannot stop it, look at us as a tool to make your
Right.
project better. And I think the people that are coming early on see that value because we have such a knowledgeable staff. But it's just really getting everybody to adopt that way of thinking because, you know, that makes the whole process a lot smoother, and there's a lot of opportunity for citizen engagement to come to the table as well.
Yeah, and that's, you know, we joke internally, and Richard Johnson's not here to defend himself, but from someone came from the architecture world versus the engineering world, you know, there's an engineering mindset is stereotypically much more detail oriented, and it's hard once there's a solution, you know, confident that this works, it's hard to change that path. I mean, that's a detail, you know, they know that works. Where Buford and I were in the same building, and he was in building science, and he watched us once a week get critiqued on everything we did. And that mindset is used to changing on the front end. And then all the engineers get to cuss us because what were they thinking on this, you know? But that conceptually on the front end, especially when we're talking about big developments, you know, having the conversation conceptually before the details are pinned in, you know, in the old draftsman's term, before they're inked on paper, you know, if we can get in the conversation earlier, I think it's a benefit to everyone involved because we have ideas that can make their projects better. I mean, frankly, I keep saying this, I think there's, you know, developers want to make money. There's nothing wrong with that. We want them to make money. It benefits the city. But I think they're leaving money on the table by not developing a little smarter that we don't have input in. So hopefully we can kind of massage that a little bit and provide a value.
Well, something else I want to touch on is the comprehensive land use plan and the process of doing this. We have started the communication and moving forward what has been called the Greeno overlay, been discussed for many, many years ago, and we're finally moving forward on it. But, you know, I want to talk about this process and how this can very easily be turned another direction when it has no merit. And that's the open line of communication, making sure that we're answering questions, because this is what comprehensive planning looks like. And we don't want that to overshadow the bigger process, which is we do need to do this for the whole city. And this is just one in many, many projects that we're focusing on.
Well, and I think kind of looking at the history of this conversation prior to me being here, Buford did a wonderful job of bringing this idea to the city as a whole, the community, I should say, and asking for feedback. There was some, but certainly not a lot. And then we had a moment where it kind of got out and some miscommunication was out there. And then it changed, the dynamic changed to we were trying to sneak something through. And it's, you know, when all along, I think there was, the city was asking for feedback to make that something that was good for everyone.
And
You know?
it's not a new idea either. I mean, it was a priority
Right.
list of things to do and planning, and it went back to the 90s.
I think 99.
Well, really and truly, that corridor began in 1987. Which is why we have so many street trees along US 98, not just the portion
Right.
that we take possession of US 98 and call it Greeno because Greeno preceded 98, but in fact, all the way to Daphne, all the way through Daphne into Spanish Fort. There is a very fascinating publication that was produced in 1987 talking about the road to chaos, and we used excerpts of it. Just looking at some of those historical photographs, and I remember how things were when I was a child growing up here. And sorry, Daphne, but we called you Hamburger Hill. And a lot of those businesses are still there. So something that Hunter did when he came along, and I encourage our citizens to look at, is if you look at the city's website and go to the Planning and Development Services page, within that, if you click on Planning and Zoning, and then you'll have to look for it, but there's an area called Publications and Forms. At the very top of the page is all of the documents we've utilized thus far. In there is a timeline, and that 1987 document is in there. So everything that we've done thus far is a document, and each document contains a link where you can download the actual document. In some cases, it's the actual video where it was discussed, or it's an agenda on a meeting. So all that historical documentation is out there. And Mayor, I want to express some appreciation to our citizens. Understand, we realize this is a learning process. And so when we had the special call meeting on September 10th, because it's a learning process, we spent more time talking about things that weren't in the corridor and things that have been in the zoning ordinance for many, many years.
Right.
And because it's a learning process, we had to kind of slow down to address those questions, because those are, I hate to call them ordinary, but those are more routine items in the zoning ordinance. Some of that was being illuminated and not the corridor itself.
Well, and
So-
a lot of this, again, stemmed from really just a handful of people that had miscommunication.
Absolutely.
That once it was addressed, I think a lot of people would have been totally fine with this, but.
Well, and I don't know if that handful is happy with things. I think we've listened to them, and we've yet to present an idea that they are, but we're getting very close to presenting a draft.
And
I
we're
think
taking the
they'll
time
see-
to do it.
Yeah, and I think they'll see that their input has shaped the new draft. I hope that is very clear. I think this is a little bigger picture, especially as we move into the comprehensive plan. And this is a little unique for me. Community engagement has been easier in previous jobs for me.
Yes.
The intent of the Greeno, the intent, the way Buford presented this, the comprehensive plan is to get positive feedback on things. Well, that requires community input. There's some civic
Right.
duty for all of us to actually spend a little time, because if people don't spend that time, and that's what it's about. We're all busy, but if they don't spend that time in a positive light, and then critique everything that comes out and is negative about that, we will never do anything.
I think there's just a lot of baggage, and I feel like I've been victim of it too in the past, of that we're doing things the same way, and we're not. What we're trying to do now is look at everything with fresh eyes and push forward the things that may have been talked about, but nothing has been done.
Right.
But when you're talking about comprehensive planning, it really is about the best for the city.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody wants to be able to do exactly what they want to do, and we're a fair planning department too.
Right.
But, you have to be honest about what you want to do,
Mhm.
and really just talk to the people that are going to know the facts, because, again, I think that's what's kind of given this a bad name, when in reality, it's a very good step forward in what people feel is extremely important to our city. We don't want, and that's what we've always said, that road to become Airport Boulevard. And that's exactly what we're trying to accomplish.
Well, and I think the feedback we received on this, it's going to produce a better end result.
Mhm.
Not because we've, cowered to, public outcry. That's not it. We listened with an open ear and made changes where it made sense. I mean, my goal is where if everyone's kind of 80% okay with that, because we can't, if we target
Never gonna
one
please everybody.
self-interest, right?
No.
We can't, that's self-serving. That's a special interest that we're gunning for. So anytime we propose something, it almost inevitably comes from a small circle, because we're the ones in the office and talking to the people we can. But then that's when the public engagement happens. And it is a challenge, sometimes just flat out illegal, to go and seek out special, interest
Right.
for feedback. So we have to provide that in a public way that does require civic engagement. I mean, you have people have to be aware of, check the meeting schedule every once in a while, and that's hard. We get in our world and don't want to do that, but that's the kind of thing, especially as we move to a comprehensive plan, that's going to dictate where it's valuable, or when we propose it, and whenever the 18 months, 2 years when we're finished, is it just going to get critiqued because no one was included? Well, I can
And-
assure you, it's not intended to happen in a
No.
vacuum.
I think we'll have a lot of participation in this.
I think the individuals that try to participate in the process need to think globally, and they need to look at the entire city, and they can't be focused on what's right there where their property is and what they want from it, because everything has to grow with some level of consistency and continuity, and you can't be focused on one corner of the world to make the world a better place. You gotta look at the whole thing, and I think that's the biggest message, that the people who do wanna help need to try to do the best they can to accomplish that.
Yeah, and it's good to have it. In those conversations, self-interests are okay. Because
Right.
if someone has a corner, it's good to let us know how that kind of impacts them. But, and I hope they can see the results, take those things into account. But we're all, gonna be impacted and hopefully have benefits. I mean, so it is about a bigger picture. It is about community as opposed to, one person. Because if you start focusing on one person, another's gonna get left out.
Yeah.
And that's just what happens, and do we want that turmoil moving
No.
for the future?
We have to have, a level of consistency and treating everybody fairly, and that's really where we are now. There's been a big shift, so.
I am sure that this afternoon's conversation is going to elicit more questions
Yes.
for all of you.
We're happy to
from Our
answer.
citizens.
And I think it's important for people to know they can email, or
Right.
that there's something on the website that you can message back, and if you have questions, feel free to do that. I mean, that's,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And Mayor, just a final comment from me regarding the Green Road Corridor overlay. I will confess that my nature is to try to solve all the problems at one time. And as a result, there were, in addition to the corridor itself, there were several routine amendments to the zoning code, zoning ordinance, that I felt were complementary to the Green Road Corridor. But in retrospect, and knowing the issues that we're dealing with here, I think, what's likely to happen is that we will save those amendments for another time, because Hunter is working on, he's trying to, everything that needs to be amended, we realize we just can't bring you a brand-new zoning code.
Right.
There's some of those things need to be vetted incrementally and brought and fed to the Planning Commission and council and staff where they're palatable. And so I think you'll see that on some of the issues in the rollout. So what that means is hopefully that Hunter's slides will be about 10 or 15 slides as opposed to my 55 slides.
Forewarned.
A little bit more general.
I will.
We're going to do the details later.
Well, I believe in life or death by PowerPoint. And I've never used a teleprompter, but I bet I could read one extremely well. So likely the rollouts coming in the very near future will be a bit more easy to digest, because we won't be trying to rewrite the whole zoning code at one time.
Okay,
Okay.
wonderful.
We
And
have
thank you
just
for your
a-
hard work on that, too.
Yeah, that was a project
It
and a
was,
half.
yes.
We have just a couple of minutes left, so I want to check and see. Pat, do you have anything from Parks and Rec that you want to share?
Working with our landscape architect on trying to enhance Valana Park that I'm excited about, trying to get some more ball field space and restructure our parking. So that's kind of what I'm working on right now.
You got a plan for that now that these two
Yes.
guys can look at.
That's right.
Okay, Jessica.
Right.
Hey, okay, so the only thing I have for you is that a couple weeks ago, we had the master connectivity workshops with the National Park Service. As part of that, we had really great participation, but as part of that, everybody who came had an opportunity to fill out a survey. Well, we've made that survey live online. You can find it on our Facebook page. We pushed that out to earlier today. We'll also send that out through the e-newsletter, and we'll probably try to put that on the homepage of the website so that everybody has an opportunity to fill that out.
Right.
So.
And while I have a moment here, I do want to warn anybody who's going to be using the municipal pier this evening, 8 o'clock tonight and tomorrow night for several hours. It is out on Everbridge. The lights will be out. They're going to be working on the electricity.
That's progress.
That is progress.
Exactly. Excuse our progress.
Mayor,
Okay,
you want to
great.
take us out?
That's everything. And we encourage people to ask more questions. You know, I'm available. You can get my contact information on the website. And I'm always available. My door's always open. So thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.